Thank you, Madam Chair, and wanted to talk with you specifically about this issue. And I don't know if you've heard me speak before the committee before, but I really sort of represent a very unique perspective when it comes to drilling, because most of the drilling that I know about, or that I'm more familiar with, I will say, happens in an urban setting. I live in Fort Worth, Texas, which is basically the hub of the Barnett Shale. And so, I mean, I live in a city with 700,000+ people, but I have frac ponds, pipelines, compressor stations, you name it, in neighborhoods. And so it's certainly a difference, because I can tell you that while this issue has been controversial in other areas, including Fort Worth, it's not controversial in Midland, Texas, where it's a part of the everyday life and basically makes up their entire economy. And so what I wanted to ask you specifically, because I have about 438 active wells in my district right now, and wanted to ask you, has any of your research been centered on the effects of natural gas in an urban setting? Because and another reason why that's so important is that back in 2005, it really took off in Fort Worth, but now you're going to start seeing more of that take place in Dallas County as well, possibly.
Right. Well, one of the things that we're doing at the Department of Energy is promoting research in dealing with air emissions, especially in areas where there may be associated gas that is being flared. And so we're definitely looking at technology to control and mitigate those emissions, whether it's dealing with improved flaring operations or alternatives to flaring, beneficial use of the natural gas that may be associated gas associated with oil production from shale oil formations, and also emission capture technology. So I think that's the technology work that at the Department of Energy we're doing that's going to focus more on urban areas.
Okay. Dr. Teichmann, do you have anything on the urban drilling and specifically?
Specifically, I'm not aware that any of the case studies, either retrospective or prospective, are intentionally in an urban area, but I could be wrong, and I would like to double-check that and offer the answer for the record.
Okay. Wanted to talk with you about drought. As you know, specifically in Texas right now, we are experiencing droughts. We've had situations to where people have, they're not taking as many cattle as they were before to feed lots and things like that. So I mean, we're really experiencing that problem. And I know that that freshwater reserves in Texas has really been an issue lately. And I know that fracking uses only roughly about 1% of the freshwater reserves in our state right now, but it was estimated to use about 9% of the fresh water annually in one of the cities in the Barnett Shale area. The water needs for natural gas will obviously continue to grow, but as you probably are also familiar, our area in the state, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, is one of the fastest growing areas in the entire region. So we're obviously going to continue to need to look for water for an increasing population in the Metroplex. Will any of the research that you plan include information for water recycling?
Yeah, I believe that question also was raised in a slightly different form, and the answer is yes. To the extent that we can recycle wastewater so that we don't need to continuously use new water sources for the hydraulic fracturing, we will look into that practice, and hopefully it will prove to be very fruitful for all parties. It will save water use, and it will probably save expense, in fact, for the industries that are developing the resource.
And let me just say this also. The earthquake issue has been something that has been covered quite extensively in our local newspaper. Obviously, when there were never any earthquakes, and as someone that is a lifelong resident of the Metroplex, I can tell you that we never had any earthquakes, and all of a sudden we have a lot of earthquakes. They have been very, small earthquakes. I think the last one that we had recently was about was measured at about 2.6 or so. But we have had the earthquakes. One scientist from the city of Cleburne, which I know that Ralph Hall knows about the city of Cleburne, that the city, they hired him. He came in and said to one of the newspapers that yes, there is earthquakes. There may be earthquakes associated with drilling, and then told the other newspaper there may be earthquakes associated with drilling, but it wouldn't hesitate me to sell my minerals and let them drill on my land. So, in regards to the earthquakes, how serious of an issue do you think it is, or not? And particularly in specificity to the size of the earthquakes that we have been, seeing, these 2.6 or lower, maybe a little bit higher. Can you give me some your thoughts on that particular issue?
And quickly, because
Yes.
the time is expired.
Thank you, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
you bet.
Yes, very quickly. A very good question. One of our goals is to understand through research just how large of an earthquake might be induced by underground injection of fluids. And so this understanding of the injection rates and volumes and how that might affect the types of earthquakes, the distribution of earthquakes, is part of what we are working on. There's been some earthquakes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You were asked about urban areas a moment ago, and there's an earthquake that occurred in Youngstown, Ohio, that we're studying as well, so that's an urban area. So we don't have the answers to these questions yet. It's a complex topic, but it's one of the issues we're looking at.